Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is what my garden used to look like when we first moved in. So whilst it was wonderfully private, there were no flower borders and the only focal point was a garden shed at the back of the garden. So over the past few years, we've been working to transform it into a garden that has an abundance of flowers and attracts wildlife. So let's take a look at how it's changed over the seasons. So this is what the garden looked like shortly after we moved in back in 2019. The garden had old decking that was rotting away. There was an old broken hot tub on the right hand side, that's the red square, and there were different levels to the decking and the stair treads were really steep, so it always felt really odd to walk on. At the back of the garden there was a flat patio area that got full sun, but there was nothing interesting for your eyes to rest on. Then lockdown happened the following year, and I started to build up a collection of plants like most people. I created a lovely view that I was happy with whilst sitting down on the deck, but I really wanted to do more with the rest of the garden. The decking came out quite far into the garden and it was quite high up. It was about 5 foot off the ground, so that when you were inside the house, you all you could really see was decking, and it just made our garden look so much smaller than it actually was. In the spring of 2021, we decided to update our deck. Underneath our deck was a solid concrete base that was a couple of feet below the actual wooden deck, and that gave us the opportunity to create a brand new terrace. So we wanted something that wouldn't rot or need to be painted, was really low maintenance, and was traditional to go with the rest of our house. I didn't want the view of the garden to be obscured by any railings, so I had a border built into the edge of the terrace, and here's what the planting looked like, mostly with plug plants and supermarket finds. And as the summer arrived, it started to all grow in really well and it just looked so pretty, and I was really pleased with the outcome. So again, here's another before and after. So we kept the footprint of the terrace, we just lowered the height and we got rid of the hot tub and some of the lower levels. And as I mentioned, we incorporated some planting. But we finally had a much lovelier view of the garden from inside the house. So you can see more of the grass here, you can see the flower borders, it just makes the garden look so much bigger. As part of the renovation, we also took out the patio at the back of the garden. So we had no flower beds, if you remember, and I really wanted a big border here. It's south facing, it's the sunniest spot in the garden, and I really wanted to create an area of interest. So right now, your eye's just drawn to the shed. So I planted up all of my pots and small plants and just hoped for the best. The following year, I had a little baby, so I didn't do very much gardening. Some of the plants had started to grow in, but a lot of them just weren't thriving. There wasn't very much colour in the garden, and the plants just weren't doing so well. I was constantly watering. The ground was hard, it was cracked, and water would just literally run along and rather than be absorbed. But the garden was starting to have a little bit more interest and form. The following spring, I moved around a lot of the plants into better positions. Because I was 7 months pregnant when I originally planted everything, I was just keen to get everything in the ground, but I could see that the placement wasn't quite right. So we added a thick layer of mulch to help the soil try and retain water. And I would say that that summer the garden looked its best yet. The edge borders on the terrace started to fill in really nicely. This is the view from inside our living room, so there's a lot more interest in the garden now. But I had a lot of plants that were late to flower. I'd had hydrangeas that had been in the ground for 2 seasons and they still weren't really flowering. The summer after that, I started to fertilize the flower beds and I had an explosion of color come summertime. My plants were doing really well and all the blooms were lasting a lot longer. I was so excited because there were plants I'd had for a while that just hadn't really bloomed very well, and this was the first time that they were, and it was just so pretty, just so nice to see. the flower border got so full, and we just didn't want anyone sort of trampling over it in order to cut the hedge behind it. And that just meant that it really grew out, and we waited until the following spring to cut the hedge. But unfortunately, when we did get around to it, our neighbours had chopped the roots of the hedge from their side, having built an outhouse. And so most of it was dead. And so heartbreakingly, we had to put it out, put in a fence for some privacy, and we planted red robin photinia and laurels. And because the builders wrecked a lot of the plants in the border, I again had to move a few things around. We also put 4 jasmine plants to grow along the fence, and hopefully that will fill in a lot quicker than the red robins, which will take a bit of time. When the trees started to leaf out, looked a lot better, we put in a little path so that we could easily access and trim our new hedges. And we gained some new trees, so we could finally see the trees that were hidden behind the hedges, and we added 2 new cherry trees too. So the flower border looked almost double in size after this, and once it started to grow in, it just looked lovely. I'm really happy with where we are right now. The borders have got structure, height, and it just all looks a little bit more purposeful. So thanks for watching my garden transformation. If you're also learning gardening, please subscribe, follow along, and I'll see you next time.